Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read my comic books read my comic books online in an online archive. If you would like to join our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share artwork, give each other feedback, talk creative process, and more, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, layouts, character designs, script excerpts, photo reference, and more. You can get all of that at amazon.jeremy.net. There's links for all these in the description for the video, and there are also book flip-throughs for those graphic novels I just showed you. And speaking of stuff to share, so the Gorgon skull piece that I was working on, I actually wrapped that up recently. So it is available at my website, jeremy.net. There's a link in the description that will take you directly to this page. And let me just zoom in here so you can see. So this is the artwork, the way it is actually laid out on the t-shirt. And this is the actual finished image itself. So it took a bit of work to get it in, to bring it in for a landing. But believe it or not, I'm actually pretty happy with how this came out. There's one more, just a mock-up of someone wearing the shirt. So yeah, this shirt now available. There are links in the description for this video, or you can just head on over to jeremy.net. You can find it on the homepage, or shirts.jeremy.net as well. So that's some new stuff there. Now on to the drawing. Let's see here. See, Byron's in the chat. How you doing, man? I hope you're feeling better. I was down with some illness. I'm still not 100%, but I'm well enough to sit in front of the computer and draw for a little bit. So I figured let me get back in the swing of things. I mean, I'm surprised when I look back at my schedule. I'm like, wow, it's really been years since I missed a live stream. So it sucked to miss one last week, but you know, life happens. So sipping a little coffee there. So I went back to this piece and I erased a lot of the line work I did before. And I kind of went back with a different brush and just really tried to focus on the separating the light areas from the shadow areas, you know, to just define the volumes a little bit more. I think that while I really like the way that they're defined on the statue, I probably need to come in with a little bit of darker tones just to give it a little bit more of a sculptural feel and round it out a little bit. So I'm gonna come back and do that. But what I've mostly been doing, is I made some custom brushes for the snakes here, or rather for the scale of the snakes. And I literally went through and I probably spent it was like 5 different brushes I went through, worked on to try and give me sort of the feel that I'm going for. So there were some I did that had more where it was just the scales. There were some that had more of just this angular pattern that I have on here. And I thought about doing a brush that was just the scales and nothing else. I'm just brushing scales in. But I kind of like the way that this thing is giving me just a pattern that follows the shape of the snake. Let's see here. Johnny Fitz in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for stopping by. Hope you are doing well. I hope everyone who went to Comic-Con this weekend had a good and safe Comic-Con weekend. It is a great show. I have not gone in several years, but I used to go every year when I was younger. Like I started going when I was in high school. But I think ever since I started doing conventions as an exhibitor, I go to enough shows, or I've gone to enough shows over the years where I saw all the stuff I would want to see at San Diego generally, or saw all the creators I wanted to see. So I still think that San Diego is a great show, but I don't miss it that much just because it's so big and so hectic and expensive just to exhibit at. But I have enjoyed watching like the news coming out, some of the new trailers, Sandman and Shazam, and the new Shield trailer. I dug that. Let's see. You see Tupper Hunter on Twitch. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. I always have to try to remember to keep looking up and keep an eye on the chat and see how people are doing, and if there's any comments I need to respond to. I'm working on I've been doing a series of Medusa pieces. Well, I call them Gorgons because that's really what they are. Tupper Hunter says, your drawings look amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I definitely consider myself someone who is still a work in progress. You know, like that whole thing of like somebody being a 10-year overnight sensation. I feel like I've started that journey, not that I'm going to be an overnight sensation, but I've started that journey of working on my craft. I'm not a beginner, but I'm not a master either. I'm just a guy still trying to learn and make artwork and comics and put it out there, and I guess share that ugly middle phase where you're not where you want to be. You're not horrible. You're not a king of the world. You're just doing the work. So, but thank you for stopping by and hanging out. Let's see here. Johnny says, you know, not so good, but it is what it is. I hope you're feeling better. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry things have not been great. I know you've had a rough go of it for a while now, but I hope that you're at least getting more sleep and some exercise, because I know that it sounds stupid with all the other stuff that you had going on, but those are the kind of things I've literally found. When I forced myself to prioritize my physical health, it made my creative life better. And that's something that I truly recommend for everyone is over the long haul. It's like when you're younger, you can do all-nighters and eat like crap and not work out. But, you know, when you get into like your 40s and such, when you get older, it's like, you got to take care of your body. You can't, it's like it becomes impossible to function if you're not getting enough rest and exercise. And by the way, Tupper Hunter, just so you know, I'm streaming multi-platform. So I'm streaming on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm responding to comments that you're not seeing on the chat that's over on Twitch, but I've kind of got a thing where I can see all of the comments. Let's see here. Johnny says, sleep and exercise, unfortunately, no. I'm going on a mental health vacation next week, so hopefully that helps. Well, you know what? Every little step that you can do that brings you a little bit more peace and relaxation, vacations are always good to fight burnout. And Johnny says, I also have a question about prints. Can I email you? Yes, of course. Feel free. You can email me or message me. You got my info. Happy to answer any questions anything that I have the information for, I will gladly share. I'm still getting the hang of this brush because the interesting thing about it is that the direction the scales go is basically dependent on which direction I'm dragging the brush. If I'm going to the right, it'll look like the scales are going away from me. If I go from the left, it'll look like they're coming towards. So it's kind of like I have to pay attention and angle the brush at certain points or change direction at certain points. And I think I have to remember is to keep scaling out because this is definitely a place where, I think for anybody that does any digital art, you're always fighting that problem where you zoom in too much and you're just putting in details that no one's going to see. It's very, very easy to do. And I'm constantly fighting that. And I've redone this hair and experimented with different brushes for the serpents multiple times. And I still don't feel like I've hit one where I'm like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm going to draw snake scales forever. And to a small degree, it feels like a little bit of a cheat. Let's see here. And Johnny also mentions I'm off social media. I think I lost your email, but I'll try to find it. Sorry. No worries. You know what? Just my main website, jeremy.net. There's a contact box through there. And you just you can send me a message through there, and then I can reply back directly from my email. So it'll go right to me. Just go straight to the home page and send a message to the website. Now, one thing that bothers me is this hand. This hand here on the left hand, the statue's left hand. More exactly, the hand. 3 of the fingers are fine. The index finger just looks weird. It looks like a sausage. And I'm sure you've had people everyone's had art critiques before about hand drawing and said, yeah, don't make your hands look like sausages. Sausage hands, not great. So I think what I'm going to do here is go back down to my base layer. And I'm just going to sculpt this a little bit. Eraser. Which eraser do I want to use? All right, Studio Pen. Let's bring this down. And I'm going to erase out a little bit. Johnny says, nice artwork. Thank you. And he also says, sausage hand, not sexy. Truth. Oh, let's see here. So I'm just going to try and make these fingers feel a little bit more foreshortened. And part of the challenge here is that I haven't really done any shadow work on the statue. I just did added all of what I consider the details that are in the light. So just defining the forms and the muscles with the light. I haven't really done much with the shadows. And I don't feel like the shadows should be super detailed. The detail should be in the light. But given the fact that most of the fingers are on the side facing away from the light, if I wanted to, well, I do want to just add a little bit more volume. It's not even a matter of volume in terms of making them feel three-dimensional. It's just a matter of making them have the correct shape. The silhouette is off. And part of this is that I'm not used to, I am far from mastering working in a silhouette mode. I think I mentioned in a few live streams back that I started experimenting with working from the silhouette in, based on some concept art tutorials that I've been taking, some online workshops. And I am definitely a construction type drawer, building my volumes, my cubes, my cylinders. That is much more of my normal approach, my MO to making art. So working where I'm trying to push and pull two-dimensional shapes into what I think the three-dimensional volumes should be, it's like rewiring my brain I don't want to say in a negative way, but it's a different approach. And it's really hard to wrap your brain around making art in a different way or conceiving it in a different way when you've been doing it the other way or a different method for so many years. Let's see here. Johnny says, I'm glad I can hang out here for a bit. Needed a distraction. Well, I am happy to take your mind off your troubles for a little bit. Oh, something that I meant to mention. I'll mention it in my monthly newsletter because I usually put book recommendations for things that I read when I'm on there. And I forgot about this, so I didn't put it in my the description for the video. I didn't put a link or anything. But I recently finished reading a great book on the craft of comic making. The comic book editor, Shelley Bond, she edited DC Comics into the Vertigo line for a number of years. She had a Kickstarter for a book called Filth and Grammar. And, well, I got to switch to the big camera because you're not going to be able to see it otherwise. But anyway, it's called Filth and Grammar, the comic book editor's secret handbook. And I am not affiliated with them. I'm not getting any kickbacks for showing some love for this book. I just think it's one of the best books on the craft of making comics. And, it's a recent book. It's available on their website, which is offregisterpress.com. And it's sort of like if you were to combine Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics with it's like one part Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, one part How to Make Comics the Marvel Way, except if it was focused on every single phase of the process and not just really on the drawing and visual storytelling. And sort of one part like humorous memoir of like her early days getting into publishing. So it's a great book in that it outlines, it goes into every phase of the comic book process and it walks you through it. So I find it great in that it has a lot of helpful tips for someone who has made comics already in terms of how you can do it better. But if you ever felt overwhelmed, like you were just like, I have an idea. What do I do after I have an idea? I've done blog posts about my process. I've done videos about my process, but this book is literally a guidebook to walk you through, okay, you want to make a comic. This is what you do next. And it just walks you through developing your pitch, taking it to a publisher or putting together the book yourself, the writing, the penciling, the inking, the lettering, putting the actual book together. Like it just walks you through every single step of making comics, and I found it incredibly gratifying. Let's see here. Johnny also asks, no dumb questions, by the way. Let me says, would you consider making a T-shirt out of this piece? No, I mean, no. Yes, very much so. Pretty much everything I do that's not a comic is something that I'm either going to make a print or a T-shirt out of. Like the skull that I showed you earlier, the skull shirt. I originally thought about, why is that not showing me anything? Yeah, this piece, originally I thought about making it as a print. It feels more like it should be a T-shirt. I'm not sure what kind of background to put it on for a print. I might still make a print out of it at some point. We'll see. But yeah, if it's something, anything that I'm drawing is just a standalone illustration, unless it's like a commission or something, it's something that I'm probably gonna make a print of. So I definitely intended to do this. All of the Medusa pieces I've been doing, I'm gonna make prints out of. I've already got like 3 or 4 Medusa prints available on my website. So yes, definitely. And Johnny says, yay, would love to buy it. Thank you very much. I will definitely let you guys know as soon as it's available. I appreciate the support. And James, hey, good to see you, James. Thanks for dropping in. On Filth and Grammar, he says, a good resource then? I absolutely, definitely agree. It is a great resource. It's one of those books that, now that I've read it, I feel almost like it's a creator's checklist for anything I'm working on. I feel like I'm going to want to go through and just look and check over my work. I'm like, all right, does this make sense? Can this be better? Like it's a great guidebook. It's a great primer for comic creating. It's a book that feels like it is welcome to, I'm repeating myself, but which is one of the things they tell you not to do in the book. But it very much feels like it's a book that has something for people at every level of comic creating experience. So I highly recommend it. I actually got it a while ago, but I hadn't had a chance to get down to reading it yet. I only just finished reading it like last week. Now, see, I didn't do a whole lot to this finger. All I did was just add a little bit of curve, a little bit of bend at that second knuckle. All I did was just add some bend, some curve there. But the challenge is adding just the right amount of curve, because if I add too much bend, then it's like, okay, too much bend is like you're looking at it as a silhouette, which means that the finger is broken. It's heading in a different direction. It's looking to the side when you're looking at most of the hand at kind of an underside rear 3/4. So the challenge is having just enough, like with the foreshortening, with the finger turned towards you, you're not going to see that bend as much. Like this bend is very visible, how much my finger is bent when you're looking at it as a profile. But when you're looking at something that's kind of either coming close to towards you or if it's flipping kind of towards you or away from you, that bend becomes harder to describe. So it becomes a kind of a subtle cat and mouse game. I needed to angle it just enough that you can tell it's turning, but not so much that it feels like the finger's broken. And I think that I achieved that. I just want to go back up to the layer above with my highlights and erase just a little bit of the highlight to make it go in the same direction. Like that. Okay, that feels better to me. It's not perfect, it just feels better. I'm not going for perfect. I think perfect left a long time ago. Hey, Amar's in the chat. He says, nice illustration of the skull with the snake bones. He said, my character Lilith was also a play on Medusa, because for me, I always thought Medusa was a black woman. He says, I thought they were demonizing her for mythology. She was so beautiful. Stopped men in her tracks, making them stone-faced. He says, also, her hair is actually just dreads. It's funny. That's kind of how I've tried to treat my Medusa. Let's see here. He says, because our hair tends to be a mystery, especially for some white people and other races. So I can easily see them translating it to as a myth, for myth as snakes. I've definitely tried to treat my Medusa kind of like giving her hair like it's dreads. So let's see here. All right, I'm going to flip back now. It's just adjusting that hand. Now, by the way, just to show you, so these snakes, the snake texture that I did with the hair, this is with the brush that I made. Now, before that, I had drawn in all of these individual strokes. So this is kind of like what I was trying to create a brush to imitate. Was this, and to a certain degree, I feel like I still have more control when I individually draw in each of the strokes versus using a brush. But I feel like having a brush that will do it is something that over time, as I get better at controlling that brush, it'll pay more dividends as I get better. But I also feel like along with the texture that I added with the snakes, I still need to go in here with a separate brush that is not the same snake pattern. And I need to come in here and just put a little bit of line to help separate some of the forms. So I took my my favorite pen, the studio pen, and I duplicated it and tweaked it a little bit to give me some opacity control while I draw. So it's not just a solid ink line. It's got a little bit of light and dark to it. And this can just help give me a little bit of sharper edges where the forms end. And I have not done enough studying of painting to really develop what they call edge control. And edge control is something that comic artists don't generally think about, only in the sense that when you're making comics, it's usually just black and white ink. And then, subtle transitions are done by the colorist, unless you're somebody who has a more painterly style. But when you're painting, edge control is the idea that there's three kinds of edges: hard edges, soft edges, and lost edges. So a hard edge would be kind of like how I'm adding these solid lines to separate the different coils of serpent. Or if you look at the line between Medusa's head and the statue, that's a hard edge. Now, if you look at sort of the edge between the part of the shoulder that's in the light versus how it turns, kind of how it turns softly into the shadow, anything that's kind of a soft gradient is a soft edge. And a lost edge is an edge where you have an object that is the same color as the thing that's behind it. So it's like the edge pretty much disappears. Let's see here. So Amar says, since we are more than halfway through the year, how are the goals you set up for the coming for the year set up for the year coming ago? I'm sorry, I'm butchering that, but I'm also a little bit loopy. I am way behind on my goals. Not proud of it, just being honest. That's where I'm at. I really thought that I would have started my my new comic book by now, but I'm rewriting the outline and just sculpting the story. For me, I have found that when I simply start because I'm eager to start and I don't have the story completely worked out, every time that I have done that, I have lived to regret it. And that is not to say that a comic creator can't just start with issue one and write issue one and then write the next issue and then make it up as they go along. Many comic creators do that with great success. I am simply not one of those people. My brain doesn't work that way. I've done it in the past, and when I have, I've lived to regret it. So I am taking my time and really trying to finish writing my Greek mythology story first. And I suppose I could start working on character designs and share the character designs there because I have the main character designs kind of worked out. Like I have the cast, the main cast worked out in my head, but I really want to wait until I have the writing done to do that and kind of share. There may be details about the characters' personalities that will change as I refine the story, and I kind of want to have all of that locked in before I start diving into that next phase of character design, environment design. But that's the big thing that I want to do. Once I'm finished with the writing, what you're going to see me diving into here on the live stream is I'm not just going to dive into drawing the comic. I'm going to start showing you the world building process. So I'm going to show you me designing all of my characters, all of my environments. You know, it's going to be not just, oh, this is just me doing thumbnails and page layouts. I'm doing a little bit more world building, and probably more world building that's necessary because I'm planning the story out to be 6 issues, but I want to do enough world building that if people really do love the story, then there's room for it to grow and to be something that's a little bit more, maybe not necessarily ongoing, but something similar to Mike Mignola with Hellboy, where maybe I'm doing like 4-issue miniseries every year or something. Let's see here. James says, inking. Yeah, some inkers are more prolific than others. I wonder why that is. Some artists do their own inks. Well, I think that it's a matter, I can't say that it's a matter of detail because I've seen some artists that are very fast but incredibly detailed, like Jonathan Glapion, who he inks a lot of Greg Capullo's work. And he is somebody who, to me, looks like he is lightning fast, but his level of detail doesn't suffer for his speed. So, I don't know. I mean, for me, I think my whole thing is that the more you do something, the faster you get at it. And I've never had, I guess, the bandwidth where I was just working on comics nonstop and doing nothing else, that I built up a large amount of speed. It's always been something where, I'll pencil for a little while, get a little bit faster at penciling, I'll ink for a little while, get a little faster at inking, but then I have to switch to one of the other phases. It always feels like it's sort of a back and forth. It's always a little bit of start-stop. And I'll tell you, the hardest part for that, I've been going on and on about how long it's taken me to write. The biggest mistake I ever made was that I have not made writing every day into a habit. And that is something that now that I've started, that's one thing, Amar, when we talked about habits, that's one thing I have done is I write, not for a long time, I write for 15 minutes every day. And I'd probably be closer to done with the story if I did it for more. But I'm in kind of I just don't have as much time to put towards it as I'd like. But writing every day is something that I've really started committing to, and it is making a large difference in my my mental ability to just work on that particular craft and skill. Because up until now, every time I've sat down to write, it's like, oh, I haven't written anything for like a couple years because I've been drawing the comic. And so it's like it's like I have to relearn how to write every time I sit down to write. Whereas if I'm just doing it every day, I'm not relearning. Let's see here. Amar says world building is fun. It is very fun. In fact, that's one of the challenges I have to fight against is making sure I don't just do the fun part and make sure I get into the hard nuts and bolts. So for me, that's really figuring out my character arcs, my character development, working out their personalities, their flaws, their motivations. Because that's the other thing is like when you read a book or you watch a movie, sometimes you're just like, I don't understand why these characters are doing what they're doing. I'm doing my best to fight that off now in the early stages, to work out who they are and why they're doing what they're doing in the writing phase. It's like I'm kind of letting the characters play a larger part in the story as opposed to just having a plot and saying, boom, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Instead of just having the character follow the steps woodenly and they're just acting out in the play that I have arranged for them, what I'm trying to do is craft it so that how they react and why they react actually feels realistic. Like these are the reactions someone would really have in that situation. And this is what a character would or wouldn't want, or based on their desires, the actions they take make sense. So those are all the things that it's taking me a while to work out. Let's see here. Johnny's says, gotta go, close up my restaurant. I'll email you later. No problem, man. Have a good day. Hope your work day went well, and I'll talk to you later. Let's see here. So Amar asks, have I plotted all the stories all the stories already? Well, I have a larger plot for the whole thing. And for me, that's the where I get in trouble. Is a lot of times you have a basic plot, and in the past I've said, all right, based on my basic plot, I'll do issue 1 and issue 2 and issue 3. And what I found is I really need to know the details of the plot. Not just I need to know all of the story beats. And to be honest, I really prefer to have all of my dialogue written before I really start digging into to thumbnailing. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfectly dialogued out. I will frequently, get placeholder dialogue, and then I will come in and rewrite as I thumbnail, and then I'll rewrite again as I letter. Because I letter my books so that I'm drawing, when I do my actual page layouts, I'm drawing into a template that already has all of the dialogue there. So each time I come before, and even during the penciling phase, but every time I do stuff before doing my rough layouts, I'm rewriting. But in terms of the question of how much I have written, I have the general idea. But for me, I'm changing where the locations of certain scenes are. I still have to work out the order in which the main characters face certain villains. Just yesterday, I had a big breakthrough in realizing that the characters are... I had been writing the story and plotting the story based on who the characters' personalities are going to be at the end. They're kind of their most evolved self, their final Pokemon evolution. That's how I've been writing the series. And what I realized is that if the character is going to have a fulfilling character arc, I can't start them off at the place they're going to be at the end emotionally. I actually have to figure out what their personality is going to be like at the beginning of the story. Like it's almost like I have to say, what are the flaws that they're going to have to overcome to become the person that's that's victorious at the end of the story? And in doing that, it's like I'm reverse engineering their personality, where whatever it is that they need to overcome, maybe they need to be more confident, or they need to be a leader. Then I need to make them more shy or more quiet or more introverted at the beginning of the story. And I actually need to change the plot so that they are forced to confront those weaknesses and overcome them step by step. And it may be somewhere in the middle story, maybe they have a big setback from those things that they're trying to overcome. Maybe it's a fear of adventure. Maybe they are angry all the time. They need to learn how to temper their anger. Maybe there's somebody who's really naive. They need to learn, to be more pragmatic. Whatever the changes are that they're going to go through as a character, the story needs to reflect the inner transformation that the character is going to go through. And so what I've been doing is I've been going back and rewriting based on character and changing how they behave in the beginning and changing what challenges they're going to face in the beginning, because how they react to the things in the beginning is not going to be the same as how they would react to it at the end of the story, because they're a different person. And that's not just the main character. There's 3 characters in the story that I need to write those arcs for and then change the plot based on those arcs. Then I need to actually do the same thing for the villains, even though the villains are not going to be, we're not going to follow the villain's storyline. Like, we're not going to show the story from the villain's perspective as well. But the motivations and the transformations and the choices the villains make are just as important as those that my protagonists make. So I have to know those things so that the places where you do see the villains, that they make sense too. They're not just there to just be an obstacle, but you want them to feel like real characters. For me, I feel like that is that's the best writing and the best stories that I see are ones where the characters really make sense to you. And that's what I'm trying to do with my characters in my story. And that takes more time. It's harder than anything I've ever done before, writing-wise. But that's what I want to do. I want to challenge myself. I want to do something that's new and different and difficult. I'm trying to literally push the boundaries of what I'm capable of doing writing-wise. And some people might be like, well, that's going to make it. Some people might think that that's foolish because it's harder than it makes it difficult to do a minimum viable product, as someone says, just getting the story out there. But there's enough stories that are just crapped out. I want to at least do something that I feel like, maybe this comes back to my perfectionism again, but I always feel like every part of my creative phase can be better, and that includes the writing. It's not just the art, it's not just the lettering. Every single phase of my comic creation can be better, and I'm reaching for better. And that's what this work that I'm doing on the writing phase, this extra time that I'm spending, is extra time to put in those things that I hope will make the story more fulfilling. There you go. It's me drawing a little snake head here. See, I didn't even need to put that much detail in there. As I zoom out, I look at this and I'm like, okay, yeah, I did put that in there, but it doesn't need it. I need to stay zoomed out more, because otherwise I'm going to keep doing that, where I'm going to put in too much detail that I don't really need. I would say that maybe that's part of both my art process and my writing process, is putting in too much detail and then carving away what is unnecessary. Which I think is true of a lot of writers. A lot of writers overwrite and then cut stuff out. Let's see here. Amar says, that's great. I set up a timer and notifications years ago, but have not used it. I set up for drawing, writing, animation, and exercise, but never use those alerts. Let's see here. He says, glad to hear you're doing that. My issue is my intent. My intent is there for a ton of things. I just need to commit more to follow through. He says, feels like I'm a little kid lighting fuses for a lot of things, but I don't commit to the task or one as I need to do. What's funny is I've given myself space to not be completely focused. Because I do believe that in order to get something as big as a comic book done, you kind of have to shut everything off and just focus. But given that I spent years writing and drawing Morningstar, I haven't had the mental space to just play and do other stuff. And that's kind of what these few months that I've been doing, of just doing standalone art pieces while I'm writing, me taking classes on art topics that I haven't studied before, or just refining things that I want to improve my skill set on. These are all things that I'm like, the stuff that I've been ignoring so that I could just focus on finishing Morningstar. So before I really dive into the next comic deeply, I want to have a little bit of time to just experiment, to play, and make standalone art just because. So it's sort of like I'm giving myself permission to break my cardinal rule of just pick one thing and focus on it. But that's just because that's what I need for having finished this. Once I do get back into Morningstar, it's gonna be not Morningstar. When I get into the next comic, it really is gonna be back to, all right, I'm just focused on this thing, and all my energy goes there. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It is challenging to balance all of the different stuff that you want to do. But I mean, I tend to break. I mean, I've shown you guys my whole process. I tend to just break it down into what are the steps, what are the things that I need to get done. And I'm just like, all right, I need to do thumbnails for this issue, I do thumbnails. I need to do pencils for this issue, I do pencils. I need to do lettering, I do the lettering. And I just sort of like, once I finish the first issue of a project, it's just a matter of repeating those steps over and over and over again until I'm done. So I think that that's kind of one of the best things you can do, is just look at what you've done in the past and try and reuse it as a template for you. Like, honestly, the video that I have on my writing process, one of the best things that I can do is actually go back and listen to my own video, because there's stuff in there that sometimes I get so caught up in my process. I get caught up in what I'm struggling with that sometimes I forget that I have set up all of these mental templates. Like you said that you created alerts for yourself. I've created a process, but sometimes I don't follow through the process. I don't use what I've created. And if I did, maybe I wouldn't be so frustrated. I mean, I don't really feel frustrated in an angry sense. It's more just, it's taking longer than I'd like. But then again, that's kind of a misnomer, because I'm actively choosing to do stuff. When I say stuff, I mean little side projects. I'm actively choosing to do little side projects as opposed to just focusing on getting the thing that I want done. And it is really hard to try and get the snake eye to look the way I want it to, while also not putting in too much detail. It is a very careful balance when you've got something so tiny. What's funny is I realized there's places where the scales didn't quite do exactly what I wanted. And the nice thing is I can just come in here with a brush, with a normal brush, and here I can refine those shapes. I can draw in what it is that I am trying to get it to do that it's not quite doing. Which is a nice little bonus. By the way, Amar, I've been listening to the Black Sands Entertainment podcast that you turned me on to. I don't know if you heard, but they're actually opening it up to having people write for them. And I'm not going to jump into that only because I've got enough on my plate writing my own stuff. But considering how ambitious you are and how productive you've been with stuff, and the fact that I know that you're a big fan of what they do over there, I think it might be worth you checking out, maybe sending them a pitch for writing for some of their series, because they did say that they're going to be paying royalties for people that sign on and work with them. And one of the things he also said is that he's going to be basically teaching people his whole the playbook that we've been talking about and how impressive it is what they have done over at Black Sands. Like, he's going to be teaching his collaborators how to do what he did. So it's like you literally can be learning directly from the horse's mouth. So I don't know if that interests you, but I thought I would mention that only because I know that you're a fan of Manuel Godoy and what he's doing. So it's worth checking out. And I mean, that goes for anybody that has a writing for historical fantasy. Or, well, he did say that he was open specifically to a lot of different genres of writers. So you don't have to be necessarily a fantasy writer. Like, he even said, I think in the podcast, he said, like, if you're a romance writer, then, they want to hear from you. It's just the story you might be writing might be about maybe a character that's, in a relationship or trying to be in a relationship with one of the warriors in the story, and just trying to talk about, you playing on the strengths of whatever genre skill you bring and bringing that to their world. So let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, yes, I have, and I'm on their Discord, but the amount they're paying is not enticing enough for me from a financial perspective. But I'm on their Discord all the time. Well, it's cool. I'm glad that you at least heard about it, and I'm sure that he probably drops a lot of tips on the Discord as well about what they're doing and how. I'm just on the podcast and I'm on their newsletter. So let's see. We are at 52 minutes. I don't think this is going to be one of those live streams where I'm going to go long today. So we'll be on for another 10 minutes or so. If anybody has any questions about process or art or writing or any questions about like stuff that you're struggling with and you like want an extra opinion, I am happy to share it because I'm nothing if not opinionated. Oh. Let's see here. He also mentions been checking out Eric July's Ripperverse. He said, even though I'm not a fan of his politics or comic, he's done quite well on his website's campaign. Well, regardless of what anyone believes, I think it's worth looking at the success that a person has and then saying, all right, well, what can I learn from this? Because you can learn from anybody. You should learn from anybody. I'm coming in here with a soft brush. I'm actually pulling out a little bit of detail in the shadow instead of painting in more light. I'm just erasing some of the shadows that I've painted in. Now I'm dropping back to a tiny brush so I can come in here and again, this is one of those things where I should zoom out a bit as I do it because it's so tiny. I mean, you guys can't even see. You can see what I'm doing when I'm like this, and I'm just drawing the snake's eyeball or the slit in the eye. At this stage, at this closeness, you guys can kind of barely see what I'm doing. But for me, like, I would really have to be this close for you guys to get a good look at what I'm doing. But the difference is, I really, in order to make sure I'm not putting in details that are pointless, I actually need to be zoomed like this far out. So almost all the way to the full figure in order to really check and make sure I'm not putting in details that won't show up. And that's kind of a tough balance that I'm walking back and forth. And I'll tell you, let's see. Hey, Jay King, what up? How you doing, man? What's going on? All's good here. Working on this piece, refining it. And I will tell you that the big thing that has helped me with this piece, I found that whenever I have a problem with a piece, I really need to look at what was the step I was doing before this. And I still have like the other versions of this piece that I've done, but I stepped back and I ended up going, I literally took this piece all the way back to, let me just turn off. I'm going to keep getting confused if I keep, well, here, let me just turn on the thumbnail. I went all the way back to this, to just silhouette and highlight and darkness. I went all the way back to that phase, and I think I turned off everything. I went back to this, my original sketch and the silhouette of the figures. This is what I went back to, and then just reworked the values from there. So I felt like everything else, my composition felt good to me. And sometimes you need to take what you have and brush it all away and go back to what the start. Where was it that where you have to go back to? Where did I go wrong? Where were things working well before you get before you can properly diagnose what's happening? Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says with the Eric July says it's raised $3 million, but it is a part of this non-woke agenda, which is code speak for something I don't really agree with. Yeah, that whole thing. I just figure if people have an audience and the audience knows what it is that if the audience likes what that creator does, then that's their business. My whole thing is I'm not really interested in what someone else's politics are. I really focus so much more on the creative process, what a person does with it and why they do it. To me, that's their personal business. And that's not saying that I am completely apolitical. I just try to keep my comic making out of that because I have people in my life of all different political views, and I have friends that I strongly disagree with on some issues, and I have friends that it's good to not necessarily be in an echo chamber. It's good to communicate with people that occasionally make you think of things from different points of view. But when it comes to the comic stuff, I've communicated with people of all different political, religious, socioeconomic worldviews, and I just try to meet people where they're at and have a interesting conversation with them. In the end, for me, it's just about, are they interested in making cool art and telling cool stories? So I've never really looked into the Eric July dude. If he's got an audience, more power to him. see here. Jay King says it's looking good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it took me a while to push this piece backwards. Sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go forward. And I kind of had the same thing with the other piece that I was doing. The Medusa, the Gorgon skull shirt that I showed you guys. That piece, like, I went back and forth on it a lot before I really got it to a place where I was genuinely happy with it. I do feel like this actual shape of the serpent could probably be a little bit more rounded. The serpent head. Does feel like it's a little bit too blunt, kind of like kind of like the situation with the fingers. It's a little bit too blunt. But I interestingly, I went through sort of a weird back and forth in terms of creating the shape, the overall silhouettes for the figures, because I would sculpt out sort of I sculpted out the outline of, I think, the male figure first, then the female figure, but then I would come back and refine one, and in refining it, I would cut out pieces from the other. So let's see here. See here. Amar says, my theme song for myself would be Promises, Promises from Naked Eyes from the 80s. You know what? I don't think I remember. I'm sure it's one of those songs where if I heard it, I'm like, oh, that track. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I'll have to go check it out. Jay King says, the shirt's tight. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I'm probably gonna make a shirt out of this one too. You know, I really should go ahead and make a print out of that skull. I just want to find what kind of background would be interesting for someone for that skull. So that's the big challenge I have, is finding a good background for it. That is too small of a brush. So I wonder, are these little nuggets of color down here? I wonder if that's okay. So I wasn't sure if that was a hole in the outline, like if there's a gap between the serpent and the statue. The reason why it's important that when I change the shape, that I go and I cut them, is because I'm using clipping masks on this. So all of the lines in the Medusa are only showing up where the Medusa layer, where her silhouette is. So if I change the shape of the underdrawing, it's going to change the shading, but also the same. I did the same thing with the statue. So that means that I might end up with places where the statue shading may appear on top of the Gorgon, unless I go through and I make sure that any revisions I make to the shape of this skull, of the serpent skull, also cut out or add to the silhouette of the statue. So not a ton that I did this particular live stream. It was a short session, but really like painting in these snake heads. So it's like this one, that one, that one, and then just refining little details. Starting to paint this one. I was painting some of these portions over here. Yeah, the main thing is that I'm out of that phase where I was like hating this piece. And there was a point where I was very much like, I don't want to work on this anymore. Like it was not being fun. I was just frustrated with everything that was happening. But fortunately, I feel like I've come out of that tunnel. By the way, if you guys are ever stuck, this is a big tip for you. If you're ever stuck and you're feeling just frustrated with your work, the drawing, penciling, inking, whatever you're doing is not coming out well, I highly encourage you to take a break and do like some master studies. Because something else that really helped me in terms of turning a corner with this piece. So I was taking, I've been taking schoolism courses. I mentioned that. Somewhere in here, where is this? I've got a gallery, the digital sketchbook. Where is it? Oh, master studies. So I was doing this just the other night. I was doing some master studies. This is a Michelangelo sculpture, and I actually put a layer on it. The photo is a color photograph, but I dropped a layer of solid color and then put the layer on color to turn it to a grayscale piece, as opposed to just desaturating the photo with hue, saturation, brightness. I just put that color layer over it so that the whole thing is gray and I can really focus just on value. And this is actually a piece that I want to come back and do multiple studies of the same piece, because even though this feels like it's got a fairly faithful rendering of form and volume, I want to try and do it where the whites are more solid and more connected. And then do one where, where I even have less line art and really let the lights do a majority of the work. So I kind of want to see what happens if I take a few different approaches to rendering the same piece. Point is that doing this was very meditative and relaxing for me. And it made it so that when I came back to, where the hell am I? And when I came back to this piece, when I came back to the Gorgon's lover, it was a lot more relaxing. And I could really focus on just rendering these two. And to be honest, when I'm done with this, previous versions I had, by the way, I see Amar, I see you over there. And he said, "You make me promises you knew you'd never keep." It's part of the hook. I had to throw that in there, a little bit of jukeboxing. I saw that in there. What was I going to say? Oh, excuse me. In the earlier versions of this piece, like there's a dress that's in here on a, if I turn off the layer, I also darkened them, but there's a dress, a sword and shield, all this stuff in the background. And I actually feel like it's all standing out too much. Now that I'm coming back to this version, it's like I'm going to work out the figure. I'm going to work out the two figures. And then, to be honest, really the rest of it, the sheets, the blanket that's going to be laying on top of them, the sheets, the sword, the dress, they're going to be way more pushed into the background. You're hardly even going to notice that they're there. And then maybe over the whole thing, I'll add a little bit of directional lighting to maybe give a sense that they're being lit from above, kind of forward above. So still in progress. I haven't even thought about how I want to color the piece, but one thing at a time. All right, everybody. Thank you again. Let's see here. I'm not sure. Let's see. Amar says, vid is gone with no lingering effects. Oh, yeah, the vid, the COVID. Yeah, that's the sickness. I unfortunately caught coronavirus. Well, I'll tell you, I still have a pretty bad cough. I've just been trying to not hack up a lung on the live stream. Mostly it's fatigue and cough, but I was very lucky. They have a medication called Paxlovid. And my doctor prescribed that like 2 days into the infection when I had a really bad fever and was really I was in bad shape, and I was able to get that medication in like the first 2 days after testing positive. And that made a world of difference. So I don't know how long this cough is going to linger. And still, I have to like watch how much I exert myself all day, because I'll just get points of the day where my energy just drops and I just got to lay down. So, but knock on wood, overall, it's definitely that, thanks to that medication, it's definitely a lot better than it could have been. But I appreciate that. Thanks, Amar. All right, so on that note, we're going to wrap it up here. So for those of you who've been watching, if you enjoy these live streams and you would like to get 2 bonus live streams a month, not just an hour, these are like 2.5, sometimes 3 hour or longer live streams, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. You get 2 bonus live streams a month. You get access to all of my comic books online. You can read them digitally. You get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, where we share artwork, give each other feedback, share resources, talk about art tools and process. So that's something where we're talking all the time, even outside of just the weekly live streams. There's higher tiers where you can send me artwork, try me to do drawovers during a live stream. Also, when we do the Patreon exclusive live streams, there's a Discord voice channel, so you can actually get in and we can just talk like back and forth in real time, not just the chat. We just be talking while we're hanging out, drawing, and all that. All that and more for as little as $2 a month. Patreon.com/GERIMI. Would you like a free digital sketchbook? Would you like to get work in progress animated GIFs showing me developing artwork? Blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me. I talk a little bit about filth and grammar in the next newsletter. You can sign up for my free monthly newsletter, newsletter.jeremy.net. You can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained, done-in-one graphic novel. You can pick up my most recent comic book, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. It's the conclusion to the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, page layouts, lettering templates, photo reference, shows you basically how I put together the whole comic book. All that and more at amazon.jeremy.net. There's also book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel. If you go there, there's book flip-through videos. You can just check out, see what's inside the books. And also, as I mentioned, let me flip back, as I mentioned earlier, if you go to jeremy.net, my main website. You can pick up my most recent t-shirt design. That's the Gorgon skull t-shirt that I was working on. Get this badass guy at jeremy.net. Let me turn this off so you can actually see the full design there. So links for that are also in the description for the video on YouTube. And if you're on Twitch, you can just head on over to the homepage of Twitch. Should have at least, if not all of these links, it should have a link to jeremy.net. You can find everything else from there. So again, thank you everybody for hanging out, for watching, for joining me on the live stream. That's it for now. Go be creative.